Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business Line's State of the Economy podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Vijayanand Samudrala, the president of Amara Raja Advanced Cell Technologies, which is one of the leading companies in the electric vehicle battery manufacturing space in the country. Mr. Samudrala is a senior member of the Corporate Management Council at Amara Raja Group, which he joined in 1992. He was also the CEO of Amara Raja Energy and Mobility, the group's flagship firm. An active proponent of the adoption of new and emerging technologies in e-mobility, renewable energy, and advanced energy storage. He is also a National Council member at the industry body, the Confederation of Indian Industry. Amara Raja is a well-known name in the battery space and owns the Amaran brand. It is also one of the country's largest manufacturers of automotive and industrial batteries. Now, for India to hit net zero by 2070, EVs will play a very critical role. Understandably, the government has increased its focus on promoting EVs through initiatives such as FAME. The government is also targeting an EV penetration of 30% by 2030, which also means that the country needs to aggressively build the EV supply chains, of which lithium-ion batteries will be a critical component. Now, battery storage is the key to India's clean energy transition, and associated with this are issues such as availability of critical minerals, components, and technologies. Amara Raja is aggressively expanding in this space, adopting upcoming technologies to accelerate the move towards a robust supply chain ecosystem. In line with this, it is setting up a giga factory spread across 265 acres in Divitpalli, Hyderabad, with a capacity of 16 gigawatt hours. Today, Mr. Samudrala will take us through an in-depth journey on the growth of the battery ecosystem in the country. My question to you, Mr. Samudrala, is how is the EV battery landscape in India emerging and how is it evolving?
Rishi, for having me here on this podcast. The electrification of mobility in India has started in all earnestness about 6-7 years ago, when the government has really pushed the expectations and policy to decarbonize transportation. Of course, we moved from Bharat 4 to Bharat 6 from emission control perspective. Alternate fuels have been encouraged. But way back in 2016-17 is when we have really heard a very emphatic expectation setting from the government. But the real traction picked up post-COVID. There have been attempts before that, but in terms of the growth in number of electric vehicles produced and sold in this country, the real traction actually has picked up post-COVID. But you see that it's happening more in certain segments of the vehicles and not across the board. Two-wheelers and three-wheelers are the ones that are ramping up in terms of adoption of electrification in the mobility sector, whereas the passenger vehicles and the commercial vehicle segment, including buses and trucks, it's happening in a relatively slow manner. Now, we are at the very beginning of the whole growth curve, so I don't think what happened in the last 3-4 years is an indication of what's likely to happen over the next, say, 6 years or 10 years period. We at Amara Raja look at this transition to electric mobility in two distinct phases. Phase 1 is where we are going through right now, where aggressive adoption is happening on the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because the use case and the total cost of ownership has been fairly well established in some of the two-wheeler and three-wheeler mobility applications, and that tribe is only going up. This will continue, bringing it to what we consider as perhaps a tipping point of adoption over the next 3 to 5 year period. Then we will see the adoption of electric mobility in the passenger vehicle segment picking up. Right now, it's constrained on various factors, which we can dwell deeper later. But as we see more and more action happening in this field, strong chain getting established, the total cost of ownership becoming more favorable for passenger vehicles, the adoption rate there might also go up. But that's likely to happen perhaps a little later during this period. That that's where we're positive about it. It's a huge opportunity, and the stakeholders like us see this as a critical juncture where we need to put our resources behind and be prepared for the growth that's expected in the sector.
So, as you were explaining that the first talk about it happened in 2016-17, but it's the ecosystem really picked up post-COVID. With respect to the acceleration in government's intent and government's efforts towards this, if you could break down the policy thrust that the government has given to EVs for our listeners, and how has it helped providing more momentum to the sector?
We refer to the net zero path that India will have to take to reach there by 2070. We would consider that there are three critical pillars of energy transition as part of net zero, because energy is at the core of net zero. And those three pillars are: one, grid decarbonization. Government has taken very strong measures in the space. We've seen significant and appreciable acceleration in renewable energy deployment in the country. Right now, the target is to get to 500 gigawatts of renewable energy, which would mean the country will have to add about 40-50 gigawatts of renewable energy as we go forward on an annual basis. The second pillar is industrial decarbonization. And here, hydrogen is going to play a very key role. And rightfully so, the government has set a vision that we should have a target of 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen production annually. But I know our focus is about transportation, and hence the third pillar is transport decarbonization. And this is where there are multiple uncertainties, say 5-7 years ago. One is about technology uncertainty. The second is about the government policy uncertainty. And of course, the third is about the demand uncertainty. So if you were to focus on the government policy, there have been many measures that the government has taken while it started setting up expectations on the industry players and stakeholders. But there have been some very definitive policy initiatives that the government took. For example, the FAME 2 has been fairly successful. 10,000 crore budgetary allocation is made. FAME 2 is coming to an end by end of March. The utilization of the budget is fairly healthy, not uniform across target segments, but fairly healthy. And a lot of two-wheeler growth is related to the FAME subsidies. Then there is this ACC PLI, the production linked incentive for advanced cell chemistry product, that's been announced, and almost 18,100 crores of budgetary allocation was made. The primary objective of the government here is to build cell manufacturing ecosystem domestically, because even today, most of the cells, or all of the cells that go into e-mobility application in India are imported. And it's important that we need to build a domestic manufacturing ecosystem, and ACC PLI is seen as a catalyst in that. An 18,100 crore budgetary allocation is made. Then, of course, the auto PLI to identify champion OEMs and the component champions. About 26,000 crore budgetary allocation is there. So far, we already have 3 OEs and 1 component manufacturer qualified for this, and the journey continues. Now, there is, cumulatively close to about 57,000 crores worth of incentives have been announced across the FAME incentive scheme, the ACC PLI scheme, and the auto PLI scheme. Now, apart from this, each of the states have come up with their own EV policies. Some of the states are very proactive in this space, but I mean, there are many states who have talked about EV specific policy in the entire value chain, starting from manufacturing to charging networks to the vehicle on the road, to getting some incentives in terms of road tax breaks and things like that. That can vary anywhere between 15 to 30,000 crores if you were to really look at the potential there. So I think the policy uncertainty is more or less kind of behind us. Of course, there are execution challenges that need to be addressed, but at least the policy intent and policy documents are very clearly saying that government is committed to transport transition as far as the decarbonization is concerned.
One supplementary question with this. There's quite a healthy amount of financial resources that have been generated inside India for the clean energy transition. However, as you would agree that The financial requirements are staggering for this industrial and transport decarbonization. So how is the in global investor interest right now with respect to specifically the EV space? Since you are a big player in this, how do you see this global investor interest?
Should see the global investors into three buckets. Those who
Okay.
are financial investors, which means they're willing to back up projects of this nature coming up in India. Then there are global manufacturers who have set up strong, gigafactory network of their own, and whether they would be interested to come to India. And of course, third is those who are willing to collaborate with OEMs in India and create some kind of joint venture partnerships to be able to bring the EV battery technology, and also in some specific cases bring the EV battery manufacturing capacity to India. I think the interest across these three buckets varies. I would consider that the financial investors are very positive about the entire EV transition happening in India, and I believe that those who are seriously committed to investing behind this would be able to find the financial investors more than willing to back them up. We have seen both Tata and Mahindra being able to raise significant amount of equity at a very healthy valuation to start with. And we also are awaiting the Ola IPO to come, and their confidence also comes from the fact that the equity markets are willing to bet behind this sector. Now, the second bucket of investors, which are global cell manufacturers, predominantly from the Far Eastern countries like Korea, China, and Japan, we have seen that the gigafactory investment activity, gigafactory project activity, gigafactory capacity buildup activity is at a high pitch right now in Europe and North America. And many of these players have made significant commitments to set up capacities in these markets. Let's accept the fact that Europe and North America are significantly bigger markets with demanding higher capacities than India is, and hence they are fairly stretched on their bandwidth in setting up projects in Europe and in North America. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act of the US government, there have been a significant inflow of project establishment currently happening in the United States and Canada. So at this point of time, the second set of investors, the global cell manufacturers, haven't really moved aggressively forward to set up their own facilities in India. That's borne out by the fact that the earlier version of ACC-PLI bidding process could not attract any serious global cell players. But my feeling is that just a question of time. Once they establish their capacities in Europe or North America, once the Indian market gains momentum from where it is right now in terms of the demand trajectory, I don't think the global cell manufacturers can continue to ignore India. And of course, the third set of investors are those who are willing to collaborate through some kind of a partnership with Indian OEMs. While there is nothing that's been publicly announced, we already had a recent news item that talked about Mahindra securing their powertrain requirements in general, but specifically the battery cell requirements through the VW arrangement, which means Indian OEMs are looking for strategic supply chain relationships, and some of those supply chain relationships could even, translate into partnerships that would lead to setting up gigafactories in India. I know that's a little long-run answer, but I think when this question comes up
Makes
about
complete sense. It makes
global,
complete sense.
yeah, yeah.
So one last question before we ask about what the future holds. The battery manufacturing ecosystem depends on critical minerals like lithium, cobalt, nickel, palladium. So how do you see India's efforts in securing these assets? While we can have processing facilities, you can easily have processing facilities for lithium, but nickel is another mineral which is very important and critical for lithium-ion batteries. Just wanted to, you to share your views on how do you see this whole critical mineral narrative that is around. And do you think we are doing enough to secure these critical supplies?
As the adage says, dollar will flow to where markets are. I'm sure that there is a supply chain solution that will evolve as the market, demand grows here. Today, we are able to secure cells. Tomorrow, when we set up the capacity here, would it be too challenging to secure raw materials required to make those battery cells? In my view, that's not, a huge say. The challenge is more about being able to produce cells in India in an economic and commercially competitive manner. And one of the cost component that influences the competitiveness of cells made in India would be the materials sold through various supply chain arrangements. And as we go along, we would probably see adoption of the appropriate chemistry for the cell making in India on two factors. One, that fits well into the Indian application conditions, and two, where the supply chain risks are minimized. So we will have to probably watch this space very carefully, looking at what are those critical minerals that will be necessary to make cells in India that are competitive as well as compatible with the Indian application requirements, and what kind of technology choices that the players would make here. Players include the stakeholders, including the OEMs as well as the cell makers. I'm confident that we are unlikely to face a situation of not being able to source what we want, but once we are evolving the landscape of what exactly we want to make in India to meet our requirements, the ability to create sourcing channels, domestic capability, long-term supply contracts is something that the corporate world will be able to handle.
Yeah, Mr. Samudra, before we speak about what the future holds, I think it's more important we discuss how at Amara Raja you are trying to, navigate through this emerging, I must say, opportunities of creating a battery ecosystem. You're in the midst of, setting up a giga factory. You yourself had now this advanced cell, the arm, which is more exploratory. You'd be looking at more technologies which are coming in. So, sir, if you could, take us to this, how Amara Raja is, navigating through this, and what your plans for your giga factory, sir.
I would like to step back a little here to give a perspective of where we stand today. See, Amara Raja started the battery business almost 35 years ago, way back in 1989. Then we saw an opportunity to bridge a gap in what the customer wanted versus what the market was offering. I mean, the industry was offering at that time. And India at that time was relatively nascent in the battery sector. We were importing a lot of batteries, so we were importing a lot of materials, we were importing a lot of capital equipment at that time. And the journey over the last 35 years is a very classic case of the journey of India towards Atmanirbhar. Today, as a snapshot view of 2024, the lead-acid battery industry, where we are by revenue, the second largest player, and by our market position in many sectors, industry leader. When we look at the Indian battery industry on the lead-acid side, you would be surprised to actually recognize that this industry has really made India truly Atmanirbhar in that respect. We are actually a net exporter of batteries today from where we started being a significant importer of batteries. We have globally competitive and global scale manufacturing facilities. The manufacturing process technology is contemporary to what's being done in very mature markets like China, Europe, and North America. Our products that are developed and offered to the customers here meet a lot more demanding needs of the customers here, and hence, Amara Raja itself is able to export to 50 different countries. And the markets that we export outside India, the Amara Raja product, the Amara branded products are sold at a premium there. Now, the reason I'm saying that is Amara Raja over the period participated in this evolution of the industry, where India was able to build the capabilities and strengths required to become very, very self-sufficient. But then, from a corporate perspective, we realized that there is a need for us to recalibrate our strategy from a product manufacturer into providing solutions and products to emerging opportunities. So that's why, middle of last year, We have renamed our company as Amara Raja Energy and Mobility Limited, from Amara Raja Batteries Limited, because we believe that both energy and the mobility sector would require a lot of energy storage technology solutions. So as part of that, we are going beyond lead acid capability into advanced cell chemistry capabilities. Of course, today lithium takes the center stage. So we have clearly charted out an investment plan to the tune of about $1.2 billion, close to about 9,500 crores, to set up a 16 gigawatt hour cell making facility, a 5 gigawatt hour pack making facility, and India's one of the most advanced energy research and innovation center in the city of Hyderabad. That's the current roadmap that we have. We believe by 2030 we would be able to achieve all these milestones, both in the terms of capacity and the technology capability. But then I think that would be only some part of the journey, because a much more exciting future lays ahead of us. But beyond the battery cells, packs, and solutions around that, we are also offering solutions associated with charging infrastructure and the solutions associated with energy storage systems. So it's a fairly comprehensive range of products and services, starting from various mobility vehicles, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, passenger cars, commercial vehicles, farm equipment. On the energy storage side, starting from home to commercial, industrial, and the grid scale energy storage solutions is what we are completely mapping, and we would be actively offering these solutions as we go along.
So one quick supplementary question. You spoke about Amara Raja charting into charging infrastructure. Now, charging infrastructure is at present the main plank on which e-mobility will run, whether we're running on highways and all. So how do you see the growth here on charging infrastructure? Because there are a couple of challenges. Grid stability is also a challenge there.
I think, the classic case of chicken and egg is what's being referred to by many people.
Yeah.
People who are considering buying a vehicle says, do I have enough charging infrastructure? People who are willing to invest behind charging infrastructure, do we have enough vehicles on the road? In my view, there has to be an effort of creating charging infrastructure so that the anxiety related to charging network availability is sorted out. It would mean putting money upfront and then waiting for the demand to go up. Technically, it's not a challenge. I know grid stability is being talked about, but there are technology solutions available to address that. Thankfully for India, a large portion of our mobility needs are met by light electric vehicles or light vehicles, whether it is ICE or electric light vehicles. So the charging light vehicles doesn't put as much stress on the grid at a single point of time. It's not like a Tesla supercharger of 350 kilowatt. What we need is more like sub 10 kilowatt chargers, but lots of them at your home, at your office, at shopping malls. So that's what we need. Much more spread out, small sized chargers to take care of the light electric vehicles. There are clear solutions as part of that. In fact, we are having a product range that addresses this light electric vehicle mobility chargers, which are portable, which are all weather resistant, and much easy to just plug into any electric AC socket that you have. You should be able to take care of two-wheeler and three-wheeler charging. So in my view, charging infrastructure development is not a technologically challenging issue. Yes, it's we need upfront investments to build the infrastructure, and I'm sure there are enough entrepreneurship in the country, including the government support, build the charging infrastructure faster than the demand arises.
So, sir, before we bring this invigorating chat to an end, if you could, explain to our listeners, what does the next 10 years entail for the EV sector in the country with respect to battery ecosystem, charging ecosystem? How should we view this? Since, as you explained the past, that a real acceleration came post the COVID years. What should we expect in the next 10 years?
Again, there I would like to define the two phases. Let's say 2030 as a marker year in between, and then look at 2035. Our research, in collaboration with many other research agencies, says that The adoption of electric vehicle will be at its fastest in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment. By 2030, we should see perhaps about 40% of two-wheelers made would be EVs, and which means going by the SIAM projections, we should see probably about 10 to 11 million two-wheeler vehicles, electric vehicles being made in that year, equivalent to about 45% of the total vehicles manufactured. Three-wheelers will be a much higher number, almost at 70 to 80%. But in terms of actual numbers, it will be much lower than two-wheelers. But in terms of penetration, it will be 70 to 80%. Passenger vehicles is an important segment to watch for. I think there is a general consensus that at least 15% of the passenger vehicles made in the year 2030 would be electric vehicle. I'm talking about pure electric vehicle. There could be hybrids also, but at this point of time, I'm referring to the battery electric vehicles. And assuming that the market would have been more than 6 million passenger vehicles in 2030, we are talking almost 1 million electric vehicles being made at that time. And then, of course, we have buses and the commercial vehicles that have a slightly different dynamics. It's going to be a little challenging for long-haul commercial vehicles to get into battery electrification. We'll have to look at alternative fuels as probably a way of decarbonizing the long-haul the commercial vehicles. But all put together, if I were to look at 2030 as a marker year, the mobility sector alone should create a demand to the tune of about 100 to 120 gigawatt hour, considering these numbers. Now, in addition to that, there should be another 25, 30 gigawatt hours of stationary storage demand for batteries. So, as somebody very closely associated with battery industry, I'm looking at the demand for batteries in 2030 to the tune of 125 to 150 gigawatt hour. Now, that's a substantial number. I know globally the numbers might be becoming bigger and bigger, but by any stretch of imagination, getting a manufacturing and demand scenario of about 125 to 150 gigawatt hour is a good, achievement. Now, this is where a little bit of crystal ball gazing comes in when we want to look at next 5 years. We have created momentum by 2030, hopefully, and a lot of electrification is happening on the powertrains. But then what kind of technological shifts might drive this growth further, enabling the accelerated adoption for electric vehicles, or will there be some kind of disruption that's going to happen here? The battery technology itself will continue to evolve. Today we are talking about NMC, LFP, lithium cells, but there is a significant effort going in trying to achieve 2 or 3 things. One is, of course, a higher energy density so that you can pack more into the vehicle, or you can make smaller packs for the same range. The second one is about increasing the speed of charging, fast charging requirement. And of course, the third is enhancing the life of the battery. A lot of effort is going in, and I'm actually very happy that after 30 plus years in this industry, I'm seeing, there is a confluence of multiple technological methods and capabilities coming in to build smarter batteries. So we have seen digital methods being adopted, and a lot of physics-based modeling is being done. All of this is likely to lead to batteries that can be charged faster, batteries that are higher energy density, and batteries that will last longer. So I think all these things will enable to make the vehicles more affordable, more reliable, and less hassle for people to own an electric vehicle. So 2035, we might see the order of magnitude of growth and demand could be significantly higher than what we saw by 2030 as a prediction.
So one last question. How are big established players like yours looking at this battery recycling? Because as it is clear that all the requirements might not be available through processing and getting new metals and materials, how are big players, established players like you looking at battery recycling?
I think the growth of battery industry will be incomplete without having a circular economy framework. The government has recognized that and then issued a new set of battery waste management rules, BWMR, in August 2023. And there are certain clear guidelines or statutes that are established in this BWMR that makes the producers, the manufacturers and sellers, responsible for what is seen as extended producer responsibility, which means you are expected to collect certain percentage of the batteries that you've sold when they reach their end of life. And this percentage collection is only going up with each year. That's the statute. But in terms of industry, there's already quite a few startups in India which are trying to build recycling facilities, try new methods of recycling to make it more viable, more sustainable. And that effort will continue to go on. Today, they are fed in terms of the end of life products more from the consumer gadgets like mobile phones and laptops and digital cameras, the batteries that are going into them. They call it as an urban mining, which means they're actually taking the used batteries from these devices. But that's not enough when the demand for new batteries goes up. And we'll have to see that the circular economy framework is very effective. I think people, as far as we are concerned, we already have an MOU with a couple of recycling facilities in India. So whatever process scrap or manufacturing wastage that we generate and any of the field return batteries that we get from our customer, we give it to these people under a contract. They recycle them. In recycling, there are two stages. There is something that you generate as black mass, which is the phase one. And then there is a refining that you do using black mass to get to battery grade materials out of that. The phase one is relatively established and easy. In India, it's possible today to create black mass. But the phase two, where you're refining the black mass to get battery grade materials, is where technology becomes a little bit more complex. But very, very confident that as the new battery manufacturing system evolves, the recycling ecosystem also will evolve equally well. And hence, India should be aiming for a true circular economy framework here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samudrala. Putting over 3 decades of experience within 30 minutes is quite a feat. Thank you so much, sir. I'm pretty sure our listeners will come out really educated out of it. Thank you so much for your time and your patience.
Pleasure talking to you, Rishi. Thank you so much for getting me here.